Hey everyone, I'm Scott Stokely and I'm here with
Gannon
Mr.
Buhr.
Mr. Gannon Buhr. Wait, you're 18 now, right?
I am. I am Mr. Gannon Buhr now.
Mr. Gannon Buhr, and we are in a professional studio, basically.
We paid a lot of money for this.
Actually, I'm going to show where we are. This is going to be so cool. Check this out. This right here is...
Worked very hard to build all these racks. Store all my discs.
And please tell me this is called the Gan Cave.
It's the Gan Cave with all my backups, all my stuff I sell. We're filming on boxes right now because the tripod wouldn't work.
No way, this is how they film on The Tonight Show, I think. There we go. I am hanging out in Iowa with Gannon Buhr, and it's a real honor. You know, usually the host gets to sit a little bit above the guest, but technically I'm in your house, so that's probably why it's level. I wanted to film this because we got into this heated argument.
So
Heated. Of course. In fact, we had to use, I don't mean to embarrass you, but we had to put makeup underneath your black eye.
Yeah.
Because that's...
Punch me, because I'm 18 now. You can punch me.
That's right, I can. You know, and if I disagree with someone, I always resort to physical violence. Old school. No, we were having this interesting conversation about what makes a good course. And about 5 minutes into it, I said, we got to stop because this is something that I think is interesting. I think we could actually share this. So before we talk about what makes a good course, let's start with what makes a good hole. And then what makes a good course might be a little bit different from that. So you had some ideas. I would love for you to share them. Oh, yeah. Wait, let me preface this. Not talking about recreational course.
Pro Tour course.
Talking about a pro tour hole. Obviously, none of this applies to recreational city courses, but what makes a good professional pro tour hole? And then I may or may not disagree.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just going to steal your idea here. Kind of in a way, but I also agree with it where a good hole means that you are stressed out on the tee pad. And when you throw the shot and if it ends up good, you're like, oh, you're relieved. And so that kind of shows that the hole has danger. And that's kind of the whole idea is we're looking to have good score separation on these holes. That way, for the course, the bad shots get punished and the good shots get rewarded. That's kind of the whole goal of disc golf, in my opinion. And that's what we're trying to aim for when we're designing these courses. And so I think that's why island holes are very, very good holes. It's important to have definitely one per course. I don't even mind two because if you throw a bad shot on an island hole, you're punished 2 strokes basically in a way because you have to go to drop zone probably and take your bogey versus a birdie.
I'm going to drop in always drop zones on island holes.
Most of the time.
When would an exception be? That's a whole separate debate, but we're talking about golf holes. When would it be okay to not have a drop zone and leave the potential of a nightmare?
I guess I have a hard time. This is tough. I mean, I remember Kevin Jones. This kind of affected this whole tournament. At DDO this year, he was 11 under going into hole 16 at Country Club, and they put one of those sponsorship boxes on the bottom of the basket, and he goes in, sliding up perfect speed control, barely clears the front lip of the island, perfect mid-range flat shot, hits the box, skips back in the water, and then obviously his decisions from there cost him more strokes. He ended up running the putt, missing it, and then he played it 400 wide, so he lost 3 strokes just on a shot that, in my opinion, was good enough to where honestly that could have been I almost feel like he deserved a tap in par in a way, but that's part of disc golf. That's part of sports. Is if I guess you could call that an off shot. You want to maybe play to left or right of the basket, but in my opinion, when you're walking up to that hole, you're just trying to get it safe. And
so at the country course, the famous island hole.
Yes, the famous island hole.
But that hole does have a drop zone.
It does have a drop zone. Yes.
So when would there be a situation where you think there shouldn't be a drop zone? Because I'm personally not a fan of island holes without drop zones.
Maybe
but
like
that's just me.
Maybe a further island hole. Let's say the island hole is let's call it like maybe like an island hole par 4. So maybe it's like a 500-foot island hole par 4 that And the island's still pretty small. But if you cross over the island, you can take it from where it goes out. If you don't cross over the island, you go to the drop zone. So maybe something like that.
Okay.
So maybe on like a further type of a shot. Honestly, if it's a par 3, I don't see too much of a reason. I mean, Simon at Deagle this year go throw it 500 feet over the island. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and then he just
On hole
plays
16
back.
and just tapped in for his par. I don't hate that. That was very interesting, but at the same time, it was kind of like a cheat code in the system. You know.
A very good cheat code.
Yes, yes.
All right, so back to but the holes. What makes a good hole?
Yeah, just being having that feeling of being a little bit stressed out in the tee box, making you think. Now there's a couple courses on tour, a couple holes on tour that I'm not a fan of because maybe one, they're too easy and have no OB and you don't think, or maybe they're too hard and you don't have to think because you know you're not going to go for it, you're just going to lay it up. And so I feel like holes that do that just almost turn the course into a 16 or a 17 hole course because you waste that hole just knowing you're going to take a par. And
so you not having to make a decision. I mean, like
you can throw different
like
shot
the hole decides it for you because it's so improbable or so likely of an outcome.
Yeah, or maybe just like a it doesn't even have to be wide open. Maybe it's just like maybe you have to throw a hyzer, but the hyzer's still like it's just the easiest shot in the world. And maybe there's no danger. Maybe there's no OB. There's a decent amount of holes on tour that there's just no thought. I know Jonesboro has a couple of them and Deagle. I believe and Deagle added some more OB this year because of that feedback. And Jonesboro, I think, is going to add OB or hazard next year because of this feedback. Is that at Jonesboro, there's a couple holes where you can throw in other people's fairways and you're not out of bounds. And I think that's an issue. You shouldn't, and it's actually a safety hazard. I almost got hit in the head with a full power drive on hole 13 at Jonesboro, I believe, or 14. I believe it's 12 and 14 cross fairways. It's across this creek at Jonesboro, over this valley, and and the holes going different directions, and you can just throw into the other person's fairway, and you're not OB, and it's like you can throw a terrible super shank shot and you're not OB, and that kind of takes away from like the stress I'm talking about. I feel like if you walk up to a hole, you should be focused. You shouldn't be loose-minded. You should be laser focused, seeing your line, and having to work hard for what you're trying to obtain.
Yeah, that actually reminds me a lot of like the courses in the '90s. The game was evolving, and on tournament courses, almost every hole was you step up and try to throw to the hole. Either you get to the hole, or you don't throw a good shot and you don't, and then you lay it up and move on. But there was never or rarely a decision on how to attack or play the hole. I mean, and this is a longer version of it, but
Yes.
But I agree with Jonesboro. I mean, fantastic courses. I mean, they're wonderful, but
And it's not that they're unfair. It's not that they're unfair.
But you attack everything.
Yeah, it's not that they're unfair, but to add that extra stress, to where in my eyes, to where it becomes unfair is that someone can throw 400 feet into the opposite fairway versus someone that throws a perfect shot, but you're not going to get an eagle. You're going to get an easy birdie from both lies. So, I mean, in my opinion, you should still be forced to throw in a general area. That's why I think hazard areas are not bad. I don't mind those at all. I actually like them because if you want to get aggressive, you can go for it. You might take a stroke penalty, but you also play from where it lies. So you take that risk. I think that can make disc golf pretty exciting.
Yeah, hazards are a great. I'm not sure how long they've been around for, but I do love hazards because there's no question of where it crossed or anything like that. It's simply you're penalized for not landing in the fairway.
Yep.
That is what a course that has natural bushes and rough does. If you don't have that, you got to make it artificial. I mean, you don't got to do anything, but the idea of doing that kind of basically adds that same element of I could plant shrubs, but I don't have the budget.
Yeah.
Do you think that a good hole gives you the option of what to do, or do you think a good hole can be a hole where the designer of the hole says, this is the shot you need to throw?
I think it can go both ways. I think there's a lot of good holes on tour where there is only one option and you have to throw a good shot to get a good reward. And then I think there's holes on tour where there's multiple options, and that's why I like W.R. Jackson so much, is because it has on almost all the par fours and par threes splitting fairways, and you can pick which side you want. Um, I think that adds a little more depth to the game, maybe, because it almost acts as like its own hole, and you can kind of create your own hole in a way, which is fun.
Well, no, wait. Does that add more depth? Because it feels like that would add less depth if a person can then throw, you know, their backhand hyzer the majority of the time instead of being forced to throw.
Well, maybe the backhand hyzer is more tight. Now the backhand hyzer is technically an easier throw in disc golf, but the gap, let's just say the gap's tighter. Maybe the people who still just want to throw a backhand hyzer, they can still throw that, but then they know the percentage is less. So I guess it depends on the hole.
Okay. What about, and obviously we're going to discuss this. This is the topic du jour, I think. Artificial out of bounds.
In today's game, it's needed for multiple reasons. Spectating is huge. We're trying to grow our sport, and with these bigger galleries we're having, and we're trying to be professional. We want to give them the best viewing area as well. I mean, some of the best venues for disc golf in terms of a fan's perspective. I think of USDGC, even the Open at Austin this year. It was one of my top 3 biggest galleries I've ever played in front of at Open at Austin, purely because of how how open the course was, but it also gave spectators good viewing spots. Same thing with USDGC. The course is technically wide open. Without the ropes, it's not a good course. But when you put the ropes in, it becomes a good, fair, difficult course. Nothing really fluky happens, and the fans can they can pick where they want to sit. They can, maybe binge watch one of the holes. It really becomes fun for them, and I think that's what the fans look forward to. And I think to grow our sport, we need to have that. I think it's also good to have, I like 4-round tournaments where you have 2 rounds at an open course and 2 rounds at a wood course, because then if you still have that wooded aspect, maybe the fans won't have as good as a view, but in terms of the tournament and how it scores, it's still playing very difficult while still, satisfying the needs of the fans.
So what about the argument that disc golf is about solving what you're given? Here's the tee pad, here's the basket, you figure out the best way to get there, which is the essence of what the game of golf is. It's creative problem solving to get one object from point A to point B. There is an argument that artificial OB is manufacturing make-believe challenges.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, like those artificial OBs can, a lot of people think, we need to play more wooded courses, and in a way, Mandos and artificial OBs can make an open course turn into a technical course. There's a decent amount of courses on tour that are pretty much wide open, but they turn them pretty technical. OTB is a good example of, you think ball golf course wide open, there's a good amount of Mandos out there, and there's a good amount of hazards and OB areas that actually turn the open course into a very technical, very I don't know what the word is, very just stressful for your mind, and that's what we kind of went back to on what a good hole is. And if you can have the entire course be that way, I think it's a pretty solid course.
I was at the first tournament that really made use of the artificial OBs. It was USDGC. I was, whatever that year was, 98-ish, 99, sorry if I get it wrong, but certainly there had been courses with artificial OB. They used spray paint off of, a flower garden or, some other area, but that was the first time where you went to a course and there was just lines of OB on holes. And there were mixed reviews, but initially it was fairly unpopular. I liked it. And what I always felt was, we're disc golf. I mean, we were frisbee golf just a few years prior. We didn't have a budget. Had we had a budget, Harold Duvall, in theory, obviously he was on a college campus, but in theory, he could have brought out the tractors, dug a hole, filled it with water, and added a lake. And in my mind, he just put in a lake.
Mm-hmm.
He just did it for $60 instead of 60,000.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it acts the same.
It doesn't. As far as the course itself, to me, it didn't change anything. And it's artificial, but so are bunkers, and so are artificial creeks, and so I never had a problem with it because I like that. I also like that. Yeah, in a perfect world, you have perfect, like you have a perfect amount of trees and shrubs and hills.
Yeah.
But we don't have that, and so you can have you can have a hole that would be a crap hole that you now made interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of holes where it'd be a bad hole, but if you add the artificial OB, it could be one of the greatest holes you've ever played. I think that comes back to the thing of bad shots need to be punished, and I think that's what artificial OB does is it punishes bad shots, which in a way would be you're in someone else's fairway. Like you shouldn't be in someone else's fairway.
Yeah, I think a great example of this when we were in Croatia at the Pro Forster, a fantastic course, and the majority of course did not have a single bit of artificial OB because it had the roughest rough you could imagine. You get off the fairway, at best you're pitching back to the fairway, which is effectively the lie you would get had it was basically it's an OB.
Northwoods Black was really good known for that, especially the first couple of years.
And you could be somewhere where it takes you 2 to get out. Possibly you have a chance to go for a miracle shot, but usually you're pitching back out. But there was not room on that piece of property to have 18 holes in there, so there were 3 or 4 holes out in the open. That would have been, to me, just a total bummer because you got all these beautiful holes and then you got this wide open 580-foot shot. And instead they put OB on each side and made it from island to island, so you couldn't push.
Yeah.
It was great. And
there's a lot of holes.
It saved what would have been a
bad hole.
A bad hole.
Yeah.
Well, it saved the course because you would have had all these good holes, 4 bad holes, and then you wind up with a mediocre course on average.
Yeah, there's a lot of holes where they do that, where you play from an island to an island. Or one of my favorites is the short landing zone versus the long landing zone on par 4s and par 5s to make either your second shot or your third shot easier. I know European Open does this on hole 3, the par 5.
Oh yeah, I do short every time.
Yeah, the OB area, but some people like to go across, and so I think there's a fine line. I think that's a great design in the hole right there. I haven't played that course, but I've watched enough coverage to know that. But there's definitely a fine line of making that correct, because if you make that further landing zone even 30 feet further, then it actually becomes a lot less boring, because people then definitely will not go for it. People will lay up.
Or a lot more boring.
Just really boring. And so when you're designing that course, you need to maybe even go out there with pros and figure out. I think this is big why the players need to have a little bit of say in the courses before I guess they get approved sometimes, is because you have holes on tour where the entire Pro Tour field will get to the hole and we'll be like, what is this? This is so dumb. It's so hard. I'm not going to even try to go for it. Well, we've all been there on the Pro Tour, that we get to a hole and we're just thinking, like, there's no point in going for this, and it takes away from the excitement aspect, and it also takes away from that stressful aspect.
So you brought up a great point earlier, because I would say hole 3 at the European Open is a perfect example, because there's a real mix of players laying it up and players going for it, and there's a mix of players who go for it, succeeding and failing. But you don't necessarily get that perfect the first try. Even if pros went out there and looked at it, it'd be very, I feel, easy to misjudge how far you needed to make each of the landing zones to make that choice not obvious. But you mentioned looking at stats and then afterwards modifying based on that.
Yes.
So even if the pros did guess that, I think this is where it should be, you're saying look at the stats, and if it turns out that 90% of players played it safe, then you're thinking,
let's make that second landing zone a little bit shorter.
Move it.
Yes.
Modify it.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's where we can in the future, maybe soon future, is almost have like a players committee where we all kind of agree, hey, this is what's going to be most fair, most entertaining, and that's what is going to be the standard for courses coming out soon. Hopefully, is that we can see how they play out the first time, and then the next time we can make corrections off of that. And I think that's what we're trying to do for the Des Moines Challenge course at Pickard Park. I have a very big say in what happens there, and we've been trying to find holes that maybe aren't given the best score separation. I know there's one hole that's a par 5 that's pretty dang easy. We're trying to find a way, and obviously it's tough with property. Sometimes the property doesn't allow it, but we're trying to find a way to make it to where, one of the shots is more stressful. And I know this last year we tightened the OB and changed the tee pad. I think we're going to try to change the tee pad again to try to make it even harder tee shot. That way it makes the second and third shots even harder. And so I think just the tee shot can affect the entire hole. So I think that's definitely a very important part of the par 4s and par 5s we play on tour.
All right, so now I get to disagree with you, and this could potentially get heated.
Oh no!
Crack. I don't think players should have a single bit of damn influence over the course designer and tournament's course of the hole. And yeah, I said damn influence. So
let me. You're the child here, man.
No, you're 18 now. I know what I'm doing. I know my audience. No, so I know I could not disagree more. I do not think that is my job as a player to give input into the course I'm going to be playing. I think I have the right to give feedback, obviously. We all have a right to our opinions, but my opinion is that my job is to show up and take on the challenge in front of me to the best of my ability. So, for example, whenever I'm asked, how do you feel about elevated baskets? And my answer is, my opinion doesn't matter. If that course designer felt that was necessary to make that hole better, my job is to succeed at that challenge, not to question them on it.
I mean, yeah, I guess at the end of the day, just like ratings, it doesn't matter. We're all playing. Same thing with bad baskets. We all play on the same basket. We all play on the same course. We all have the same ratings based on that. So I guess I definitely see what you're saying. I mean, I think I can agree both ways. I mean, I wouldn't hate helping design a course. It'd be fun.
I mean, I would love to give input too.
Yeah.
So me personally, and I'll be honest, I think the most fair courses are all 461-foot sidearm hyzer tumble shots.
Yeah, I prefer about 515, very overstable driver flex.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. That's way too long by 27 and a half feet.
Oh, I guess we have another disagreement. I might have to punch you in the eye and put some makeup on.
I don't have makeup. I ducked last time. Okay, so let's talk about the stress of a hole. Because, yeah, I did bring this up earlier that I love the fact, or to me, what's exciting is two-part. It's not just exciting over succeeding, but it's the excitement over the lack of failing. And I got this from Bradley Williams at Northwoods Black. We were playing a practice round. And I love this. Bradley says, I love this course because every time I get a par, I get a dopamine hit. And I went, you're right. Like, there's a couple exceptions, but most of the holes at Northwoods Black, when you par them, even a top player pars them, a little bit of you goes, that could have been worse. And so you actually get the enjoyment over not failing and possibly the double enjoyment over succeeding. And that's kind of what you're saying. Like, the anxiety actually allows you to have pleasure over the relief.
Yeah, like, I mean, we've both been in the winning seat, obviously very different eras, but I mean, we can both probably remember that feeling of knowing you're going to win or something like that, Maybe you're coming down in a heated battle and your competitor messes up pretty bad, or maybe it's a heated battle and you park a shot. That feeling of just the relief is insane, and if you can replicate that in just one hole of a course and do that throughout the whole course, I think that's what makes a really solid course.
Yeah, I actually, and I don't know if this is true or not, but as a thought experiment, I've said that I thought that hole 1 at Eureka is the greatest disc golf hole in the world. And the reason why I said this is that the night before I played there, I guess we played 2 rounds there, I couldn't sleep the night before because I kept having this like panic attack over having to play hole 1 the next day. Which, by the way, if it was a stupid hole that involved luck or something like that, then that doesn't make it a good hole. So just because it's stressful doesn't make it good. But it's a good hole. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's strategic. It's risk-reward. It's a good hole. But the fact that I couldn't sleep over the dread of having to play that hole, like I felt like that was a good hole, and I think I got like a par and a birdie, and I mean that the par was great. I felt so good about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've experienced the same thing. And for me, it's like almost the whole course. I've been.
Well, yeah, no, the whole course.
Yeah, it's like the whole course is like, okay, well, this hole, you know.
Oh my God, the worst hole in that course, the over the ball field. That stupid little easy shot over the ball field.
Best hole ever.
That's like it is like the best hole ever. If if there was no out of bounds, I could throw 20 shots in a row, and every single one of them would be in the safe landing area, and I wouldn't even think twice about it.
But you put the scare factor in there.
And then if you go a little too far, a little too deep, you're out of bounds too. And if you try to go too wide to the big landing area and play it safe, you're still looking at 160 feet. Oh my God, that with OB, yeah, no, it is the best hole ever. But it's like, that easiest hole in the world that every pro in the world when they get a par goes,
I've never parred that hole and been mad. I've never. Obviously, you're looking to birdie.
It's just a hyzer
and we can birdie, but I think it kind of depends because that's Eureka has a lot of blow up holes, and I think that's what we look at as pros is if you're looking at a blow up hole and you get away with a par, you're like, you know what, whatever, it's fine. Now let's say that hole played as hazard, you know, let's say the baseball field was a hazard and long was a hazard. Now you actually would maybe be mad with a par because you know the worst you can take is a bogey.
And you're attacking it and it's 400 feet wide open.
The worst you can take is a bogey. Now if you have OB how it is and you go back to a 350-foot drop zone, you can take a 6 from that.
Yeah, that drop zone is like 350, right?
Yeah, it's like a whole new par 3 as a drop zone.
With OB on both sides.
With OB on both sides, and it's always windy with an elevated basket most of the time.
That is a perfect example, and you take away the OB on that hole, and it's just I don't want to say I know it's dumb. It's wide open. So it's a hyzer. Like the old guy can just get there with a fairway with a hyzer. I'd probably throw a long range because I'm old, but I could do it with a fairway. It's just right there. Yeah, no, that's a great example. But you think that's a great hole?
Yeah, I think I actually think like Eureka, Temp is a really good course in terms of what we've been talking about. Feeling stressed out, getting that sigh of relief. When you finish that course and you only have one bogey, you're feeling pretty excited about yourself because you know you shot a solid. Usually it results in like a 7 or 8 under at that course, which is a very, very, very good round because you look at what other players do. One of my favorite games to do with the boys is go back and look at all the scores of what people took. And we're like, how is that possible? Because some people were taking these huge numbers, and I think that shows it's a good course.
Yeah, I think I played bogey free that round and took a double bogey on 18, and it was like a 10-30 round. It was still like a really high level round for me. I took a double bogey on the last hole, and I remember actually thinking to myself I wasn't that pissed because that's 2 bogey strokes in a round. You know.
Well, over 18 holes is not bad at all.
Yeah, even though it was 18, hole 18, which usually the last hole of the round dictates like whether you keep your lunch down or not.
Yes.
Like it shouldn't because it doesn't matter where the bogey took place. But I remember actually not being. I wasn't upset. I was like, that's a good round still.
One of my favorite feelings in disc golf is, and I've actually had that happen at that course before. I shot 11 under par and was leading Ledgestone by 2 strokes last year, and I had no bogeys. I played a bogey-free round at Lake Eureka, and it was just one of the best feelings in the world. It was like it's when disc golf feels easy, even though, and it is. I didn't throw any super miraculous shots. It's not like I was hitting these huge putts. I was just making my 38 footers, my just outside circle putts. I made like 3 of them, and then I made all my circle ones, and on the holes that have very tough drop zones, I kept it in bounds. And when I threw OB on the holes that, you just play from where you lie when you go OB, the last point in bounds, I get up and down for my par. But, I broke the course down very well. And when you finish a Pro Tour round without a bogey, it's like one of the greatest feelings ever. You feel very accomplished. You feel like you're a smart player. You executed your game plan. Obviously, our game plan is not to bogey. And if that's what you're telling yourself going into the round, and you executed good with no bogeys, you're gonna feel pretty good going to bed that night. Go ahead in the next round.
For sure. All right, we talked about another course on tour that we both agreed is one of the best courses out there. Absolutely one of the funnest courses out there. I love the course, but you had
hate
some.
the course.
You actually hate it.
It's my least favorite course on tour.
Is it really?
It's me, Alden, Isaac, and Gavin's least favorite course on tour.
Okay, and I think it's one of the best courses on tour. But tell me why I'm wrong. Because let me do this. I'll go first this time, and then you can tell me why you feel like I'm wrong. Talking about Toboggan.
Yes.
Okay, I love Toboggan because number one, it's hard. Number two, it's fair. It's incredibly fair.
Yes, I agree with both.
If you and it's fun, and I don't know if that should matter as far as quality, of course, but for the sake of this, I feel like it's fun. But I like the fact that you work really, really hard, and then every once in a while you get rewarded with a birdie. And it's like you have to, but every one of those holes is like they. I feel like you can get into trouble on. Now, not Eureka quality trouble. I mean, they're not. There's not a lot of blow up holes out there.
Yeah.
But I felt like there's trouble. You hit early on those par fours, you're bogeying. You know, but
I guess I looked. There's nowhere to hit early.
Okay.
There's not really nowhere to hit early, so you end up throwing a mediocre drive, and then it's just a par because there's no OB.
Well, okay, so I like the fact that you grinded out your pars and then you got to birdies when you could, and if you happen to get 5 or 6 of them each round, you're in contention.
This could also be though because of like where our like skill set is at right now too though. You know, you being, you know, you said 10-18 right now,
Yeah.
and I'm 10-44 I believe.
Well, we're playing a different game.
Yeah, and so like I can actually see it from your perspective because I was there 2 years ago, and I you know, back then I played Toboggan as kind of what you're saying it as, where now, like in a way I kind of like I don't expect, but my goal because I know I can win is to be up at the top every single weekend, and when I have a course that is challenging like that, where your birdies are so hard to get, it's really frustrating for a higher level pro, because what happens is you start getting all those top pros start getting kind of drawn back to the rest of the field, just a little bit, and it kind of condenses the field to where, you know, one stroke can mean a ton. And
Yeah, no,
not that that's
I
bad, but at the same time, you know, you shouldn't have a guy throwing 350 feet away from the hole. And there's not a single drop of OB. He gets up and down for his par. I put it 80 feet away, miss my putt. You're probably gonna miss an 80-footer. We get the same score. I threw a much better drive, and I should be rewarded with a better drive, but you're not because.
But if you did that scenario 10 times, you're going to make 2-3 strokes because you're not going to get up and down every time from 350. You are going to get up and down every time from 80 and maybe throw in a bonus.
I guess where I don't like that is where, like I think, and Simon's talked about this. Like bad shots need to be punished. If a guy lands 350 feet away, in my opinion, and he's not even on the hole anymore, he should be out of bounds. And the fact that the dude even has a chance, you know, sure we can do the 10 times thing, but the fact that he has a chance every single time to save par, there shouldn't be a chance. He should be trying to save bogey from there. And so, because I'm a numbers guy, I'm looking at the score separation of that course. If you go through every hole in that back 9, there's not really a single hole in the back 9 that you're like, okay, I know for a fact if I throw a good shot, I'm gonna birdie this hole. There's a lot of holes out there where, you know, they're 530 par 3 downhill, really tight gap. You miss the gap, you're 100 feet away, pitching up for par. Every single player in the field is like that. I think there's like a stretch of like four to 6, 7 holes out there on the back 9 that are, if you look at the scores and the score separations and how many birdies they get, they average like 4 or 5 birdies per round out of an 80-person field. And in my opinion, that's a bad hole when there's also only, you know, 7, 8 bogeys per round. The whole field's taking about the same score. You basically just take away the hole from the round, and boom, it's not even there anymore.
Okay, so talking about score separation, you made the point earlier about the percentage of, like, looking at the numbers afterwards to determine the hole, effectively taking subjectivity out of it and saying, well, maybe the opinions aren't as important as the numbers. And you said looking at a hole based on the percentages of pars, birdies, and other. So what were you saying about that?
Okay, so when I'm looking at a hole in terms of how I want to design it and how I would like it to be designed is, you take, when you're looking for the best score separation, you take the birdies and the bogeys and you combine them, the percentages. So let's say a hole averages 50% pars, 25% birdies, 25% bogeys. That whole average is 50-50. If you add the two 25s, you get 50. With the 50% pars, it's a 50-50. So half of the field is basically, getting a different stroke than the other half of the field, that's the best you can possibly do. And that's the goal in my eyes. Obviously, it's good to have those hard holes every once in a while, but if you can get every hole to where it's fair in that sense, I think that's as good as we can do, because there's a lot of holes on tour, and this is why I don't like D-Glow as much. You look at the score separation, you look at the percentages. Almost every hole in that back nine is about 8% birdies, 12% bogeys, and then you have that 80% par in the middle. You want to get that par in the middle down as low as you can possibly get it. That's always the goal, and that's why island holes are really good. You don't see a lot of pars on island holes that have like tough drop zones, because you make the island and you're probably in circle one, you're gonna make your birdie, or you miss the island and you're gonna go to your drop zone and get your bogey. And so the good shot got rewarded, the bad shot got punished. If a hole can give that variety where the good players get rewarded, the bad shots are punished, I think that's what I look for in a hole, and that's why I think when designing a course, you can kind of look at where to put OBs, where to maybe make a tee pad so the trees are in a different place, stuff like that.
Okay. And yeah, what you're basically saying is you like there to be score separation, which I also agree with. I guess I'm even if I concede the point, which I think everybody thinks there should be separation. Separation not created by luck is typically a sign of a good hole, or often.
For sure.
But when I look at all of the rest that the D-Glow has to offer, the elevation, the interesting shots, the variety of shots.
The front nine of D-Glow is great. Don't get me wrong.
So I think that's still one of my favorite courses.
Would you agree though that you can have a stretch of holes that can ruin a course for you? Like if let's say you have a course that has 12 good holes, but 6 of them are just awful. Can that kind of ruin the whole course for you in terms of how you look at the course as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I don't know if that would ruin the course, but yeah, obviously
it makes it feel a lot worse.
Yeah, of course.
That's how I kind of feel like me and a lot of the players on tour have viewed D-Glow in a way, and it did get better this year. They did add some OB, but we look at it, and there's just that kind of stretch of holes that you get to that stretch of holes, and the entire card's just like, ugh, this is so boring. Because you're at 1 to 2 under going into those holes, and you finish them at 1 to 2 under. Nothing happens. You just end up. You can look at those scorecards. Go to D-Glow. You go to that stretch of like 7, 8 holes in the back nine. It's just a bunch of white. Very few bogeys, very few birdies. And
no, I understand. I mean, I birdied most of them, but I'm Scott Stokely. I can't expect you or other players.
I can't reach them.
We're playing a different game.
We're playing a much different game.
All right. So what about now? This is actually a talk I had with Chuck Kennedy, because I said something once that I now completely disagree with, but now he quotes me on it. And I love Chuck. Chuck created the rating system. He's a friend of mine for 30 years. But we don't agree on this point. What do you feel about a hole, or rather, do you feel it would be unfair for there to be a hole that some players can reach and other players, if not most players, can't? Let's say for the sake of argument, you're talking about a wide open hole with no trees. In other words, it's a crap hole. Okay, so I'm not talking about if it's a good hole or a bad hole. Okay, it's a crap hole. There's no trees.
Yes.
But that hole is 600 feet away, and there is thick enough grass where you can't roll. In other words, the majority of players can't get to that hole. Some players can. Is it unfair that only some players can reach it? Or is it the players who can't reach its fault for not learning to throw farther?
Yes, I agree with that. I think throwing far is a skill. It's as simple as that. And I think a good way of looking at it is, people always say, oh, short people can't throw as far. They have a huge disadvantage. Take someone like Jake Hebenheimer. I mean, you've seen, he's probably 5'8". He's a pretty short guy. Paul Macbeth. If there are short people that can throw that far, that means that all the short people can throw that far with the proper timing, proper explosiveness, proper form. It's still there for them.
But all things being equal, Jake with your body throws 60 feet farther than Jake does now.
But he also doesn't move as fast because his limbs are longer. It's a lot harder to move fast when your limbs are so long. I know I struggle with that. I struggle with being really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then, someone like Eagle is that much quicker than me. One, he's a little bit stronger, but two, he's also a little bit shorter. His wingspan's a little bit shorter, and his height's a little bit shorter. He can move a little bit quicker. I think that's definitely something that I feel like, I feel like there's a lot of tall people that feel like they're throwing hard, and then they look at a video and it's kind of slow motion because.
But physics is on your side if you're taller. I mean, there's an inherent advantage.
There's definitely a higher ceiling if you are in tune with your body.
So a basket at that ceiling, some people would feel that's unfair, and I'm in complete agreement with you. I used to think that it was unfair that I had a skill set for a decade that no one else had that was never rewarded. I mean, once around, and it's like, but I wasn't good in the woods, which other people had as a skill set, which rewarded them.
So you didn't get rewarded at all, but they did.
Correct. That's how I felt. Now, but I'm not a hypocrite, right? So now I'm not on the pro tour, and I mean my sidearm flies a mile, but my backhand is not. I mean, I'm probably middle of the pack now. 2 years ago, I was probably in the 60 or 65th. I was still better than average. I still threw like 550 or something, but that's not 700.
Yeah.
And I'm not a hypocrite. I felt like if I couldn't throw a shot that Eagle could, that's my fault for getting old. It's my fault for not having the skill set, and it's sports. Sports isn't fair.
Yeah, it's not. That's
the reality of sports.
Same thing about it.
Older. Yeah. That's not the course's fault.
It's easier to be accurate when you're shorter too. When we get in the woods, it's a lot easier because there's a lot less variation for your limbs. It's simple as that. And you can look at so many tall players struggle with
so I don't throw far and I don't throw accurate.
Very short.
Great, thanks, Gan.
Yeah, you're on the decline.
It's almost over.
But yeah,
no,
I mean,
that's not kidding. It's the truth.
There's very few, very tall players in disc golf that are very good in the woods and very good with those kind of nose up, touchy putter shots. I think
that's true.
I think only like Matteo and Calvin Heimberg are probably your best two that are pretty tall.
And even them, on the short game, don't compete with the old school players.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not.
It's a different game.
Yeah.
So you don't think, because I'm in complete agreement.
I'd say let's bring that whole down to 550. I think 600 is a little bit of a stretch. 550, I think, is obtainable by, if you're on the pro tour, that's an obtainable goal.
Yeah, there's a distance that you have to throw. You talk about.
I'd say 500 golf distance if you can place it where you want 500 feet every time. Look at Isaac Robinson. That's what he does, and he's a world champion.
Yeah, I think it's even maybe a bit shorter. I think 450 golf shots with 5 1/4 to 550 power shots, but those are the ones you have to flex is the minimum.
Yes,
look, if you can throw a 500-foot hyzer, you're better off than if you can only throw 450. But 450 is that baseline, and as of right now, that's achievable for everybody.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, you go to Finland and it's achievable by all the 12-year-olds.
There's so many Europeans coming over right now that are throwing so much further than the Americans.
Yeah. So
now they just have to still dial in the rest of the game. I've played with a lot of Europeans that throw way further than all the Americans, and they kind of struggle on the putting green or maybe their accuracy, but that'll come with time.
Yeah, give them 4 more weeks.
Yeah, and then we're all
They're
toast.
coming.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, America. The Finns are coming.
They are. They can figure out how to.
Oh.
Get that killer drive. Get that.
There's this kid named Rasmus.
I played with him at USCDC.
Rasmus?
Yeah, he throws like 8 million feet.
Yes.
Highest ceiling I've ever seen.
Yes, 8 million feet backhand and sidearm. Yeah, I've never done this before. When I met him, I saw him throwing before the round, throwing sidearms, and I was like, this is so embarrassing. And I walked up to him and I introduced myself and I said, would you mind if I videotaped you?
That's what I did at the U.S. Distance Comp. I videoed him because it was so fun to watch him throw.
Yeah, by the way, you videoed him, I videotaped him.
Yeah.
Because video, anyways, I still call it that, I can't help it. So you also video, okay, so now I feel a little better now. Yeah, when you watch him throw, you just go, that is mechanically correct.
He's not that tall. Mm-mm. He's he's probably 5'11", but his timing's perfect. He's fairly in really good, in pretty good shape actually too. but you can just see the explosiveness and his timing is perfect for what he's trying to do. And he was getting some of the sickest late flips I've ever seen with these brand new destroyers. He was throwing them 400 feet down the fairway, then they'd flip over.
Yeah, you know who does that also? And
Double G.
Double G, Cole.
Gridallen? Yeah, he can get them to go, and then they go, last
that's
second.
Like physics, that's not, that like kind of defies what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm certain that I could have 25 years ago, had I thrown these discs 25 years ago, I certainly can't do that now. Like what they're doing, and I mean, you throw a mile, but there's something, I don't know if it's just either more or less spin or whatever it is, but yeah, there are players that can get a late flip on a stable disc as wild. But so anyway, so I agree. I think that the holes should be rewarded. And so I want to ask you about what makes a good course, because now it's a different topic. Well, not totally different, but anything else about what makes a good hole?
No, I think we covered most of it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll argue later over this. We'll send
part 2 next year.
We'll send angry emails back and forth. We resort to name calling.
I don't use emails. I'm not 50.
I got no comeback. I'm gonna say some horrible things about my MySpace page.
Oh, great.
Yeah, baby.
No one's even on that platform anymore.
Okay, fine. In my AOL chat group. Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
Oh my God. All right. Of course, kids these days. It's okay. Forgive him, my fans and my audience. He's 12 years old. He knows not what he speaks.
Just turned 12.
Just turned 12. All right. Okay, what makes a good course now? So, like, in the simple answer would be a bunch of good holes. But there's a couple of bigger picture things. So first off, can you have a good course if it's one-dimensional? Because let me back up.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
We would all agree that if you had to play one course for the championships of the university, you'd probably want to have a variety of long holes, short holes, wooded holes, open holes, OB holes, non-OB, elevation, right? Variety. I think everybody would agree that a balanced course is best. But can a course be a great course if it's one-dimensional? Meaning it's just a ball golf course. It's just a manufactured OB course. It's just a woods course. Or does the course itself have to have variety to be good?
It's a good question. I mean, I definitely look for variety. I think some of my favorite courses are ones that have open and wooded holes. Then I also have courses that are all open that are my favorite and all wooded that are my favorite. I mean, it sounds stupid, but just a good mix of good holes. What we just talked about, what makes a good hole, if you have a good mix of those with varying, maybe a little bit easier, a little bit harder, around the kind of middle average on what the hole would be, if you can kind of incorporate those into a course with a mix of woods and open, I think that's where we get our highest level disc golf.
Well, so what about this argument, and this is subjective, but in tennis, you have different court surfaces. You have players that excel at different court surfaces, but you don't necessarily have to have, you alternate games between clay and grass to get, to make sure to see who the best tennis player is. You can have players that specialize and players who are good at everything. So the idea being is, the argument would be, it's perfectly fine to have a one-dimensional course that's a long, wide-open ball golf course on tour that tests one part of the game. It just shouldn't be every weekend. But it's okay to have a couple stops.
You can have the tour can have its own variety too. Just as how the different holes have variety, different courses have variety, the tour can have its own variety. Maybe we go woods open, woods open, woods open open. We have a good mix of our schedule to where we're not playing the same style every single week. I think that's also a challenge in itself.
When you're looking at a course and you're judging the course, do you take into consideration things such as whether there's porta potties every third hole, or whether there's a long walk between fairways?
Those are the worst. Maple Hill's the worst for that. Okay,
so you do consider that when you're judging a course, not just the quality of the hole?
I'd say if I'm looking at a casual round, most of the time I judge a course just based off of the holes. I don't care too much about the walks. In casual rounds and practice rounds, it sucks. But I mean, and in tournaments, it's not fun either to walk super far. But when I'm judging the course, well, if I'm giving it a rating, I don't look at that.
You don't consider those. You just consider holes.
Yeah, well, I consider like the landscaping, and I think it's nice to have if you have bathrooms, places, if it has good rock work, good benches everywhere is important. I think that's nice to have.
Do you care if the course is pretty, aesthetically pleasing?
Yeah, for sure.
It matters.
That's why I think like the Smugglers Notch courses up in Green Mountain Championships is one of my favorite events because it looks good scoring, course is fun to play, not really too many long walks. It's just a great mix of what you're looking for in a course.
So just a good experience.
Yes.
Okay. And I had another question, but I forgot it, so it probably means it's not very important. It was probably a B minus C plus question. And I can't remember what it is, and I don't want to edit out dead time, so we're gonna skip it. What is your favorite course?
It was W.R. Jackson.
It really?
Yeah. I like when we're talking about the variety. I really like wooded courses that you're in the woods, but you're in the open. That makes sense. You'll have the woods canopy on the sides, and then you have the open in the middle, and like maybe like green grass in the middle of a wooded course is like some of the prettiest things ever. It was really just the perfect course in my opinion. I love that course so much. It's sad to see what happened to it with all the trees getting knocked down because of the Beatles, but I loved how dynamic it was. There's so many different shot shapes. You had hyzer flips, you had flexes. Not only did you have those, but you had forehand holes, backhand holes. You had holes you could choose multiple gaps on. You could play different fairways. You can make the game your own while still playing with what the course gave you. And I think that was one of my favorite parts about it. And you kind of feel like you're secluded in the woods. It just had a good disc golf feel to it. While being in the woods, still being very fair. I love that so much. I think it's because it was a really fair course is why I liked it a lot. And then other than that, I also had Brewster Ridge was my favorite course. They made a couple modifications that I wasn't a big fan of, but it's kind of the same style of disc golf, just a little bit different terrain. I like Pickard Park and Fox Run. Those are the two more open courses I'm a big fan of. The Portland Open East course is one of my favorites. The original Portland Open course from 2022 that we played this year as well for the last two rounds was just a perfect mix in my opinion of the elevation change, artificial OB, natural OB, just such a beautiful property with the holes being fair and rewarding and punishing when you throw bad shots.
Okay. And I'm just going to add mine. And this was not even a tour course. Loved the Ala Disc Golf Center in Sweden. That was mind blowing. I love Eagles Crossing.
Oh yeah, Eagles Crossing. I appreciate. Obviously all the work that was put in that place.
Yeah, that course is magic. Ala Disc Golf Center. I can't wait for it to start getting coverage and getting. I mean, it's rated one of the top 10 courses in the world. It's not some like secret gem. Everyone in Europe knows about it. Ala, A-L-E. Ale Disc Golf Center in Sweden. There's a few courses on the property, and it's a disc golf like paradise.
Nice,
it's gorgeous. The other course that I love, I didn't get to play, the course in Krokol, Norway. This is where I had that E. coli came back. I had another bout in Europe that I thought was going to kill me this time. It turned into a blood infection. And I wasn't able to play the event, but I got there and I saw a practice round, and I played that course and thought, if there's going to be a course I win on, it's this one. I'm not saying I'm going to win, but it was my best shot because it's the most technical anxiety. Every hole, like it's artificial OB, but every basket's on a slope with OB at the bottom of the slope. I mean, it's just like. It's a non-stop panic attack of technical shots, but it suited my game. Like I can put my side on my dime, and it's like, oh, I can't wait to go back to play Krokol. All right, I remember what my question was, because you're going to solve the problem here that's been haunting the Disc Golf Pro Tour for years. and I expect you to give the solution right now. Ready?
All right.
Okay.
Or lights.
We'll leave that out.
Whatever.
We're in the twilight of my life. This is a metaphor for my career, because we're about to wrap it up. All right, so I think, I can't speak for everybody, but I think the majority of disc golfers on the Pro Tour don't like the wide open holes as much as they like challenging technical holes. Challenging technical holes are typically the hardest to film, but especially the hardest to spectate. So you wind up having the most spectatorable, filmable holes be the holes where you're throwing 500-foot hyzers wide open.
Yeah.
But that's not the best place to play the game. But if you're trying to sell a product to a mass audience, you want a product that translates to video and translates to an in-person experience. What is the solution? I need you to solve it. No one has a good answer.
We just gotta find the right properties. I think, in my opinion, the best way to still have a technical game, it's gonna be tough to find the properties, but have that wide open field aspect, maybe a little bit of rolling hills, and very mature trees, very old trees with big trunks, and so and design the course to where the trunks make the fairways while it's still pretty wide open. There's no undergrowth, it's just these big trees. And then you have your lined OB as well. That way you still have that technical aspect. I mean, I forget who, I think we're making jokes about, is the future of disc golf W.R. Jackson with no trees in the rough, but just 1,000 Mandos going down the middle of the fairway. Because that way you still get the technical aspect while having viewers. Mm-hmm. And so I think how you do that is just you get an open course, and you have big mature trees with still some OB, and you can kind of manufacture your own fairways and stuff like that. And then as you get toward the green, maybe have the trees get a little more dense, a little more, maybe those like kind of more skinny trees, and have more of them kind of within that circle 2 range. And that way it still makes putting difficult. You still feel like you have to throw a technical approach into the green, and people can still watch. That's my best solution.
Yeah, so, and I mean, that's a great solution, but it certainly would involve having the perfect piece of land, or planting the perfect piece of land, and then 10 years later, 15 years later, you have the course. I think it's tough. I mean, the courses do such a good job now. It improves every year, but it is going to be tough. I'll tell you one solution, not necessarily solution, but a course like Eagles Crossing, and it helps when you can throw money at something. You can always make things happen. But he designed some of those holes. He built them specifically with spectators in mind. So that's probably maybe the one other thing, is that I don't know how many courses were built with spectators in mind during the design process.
We probably still play a lot of courses that didn't have the spectators in mind. We're getting towards that, but there's still a lot we play that didn't.
Yeah, now that's something that is a consideration. You want a tour course nowadays, you need to have parking, you need to have Wi-Fi, you need to have bathrooms, you need to have facilities, you need to have
food.
There's so many different things that go into it besides just the course, that even some of the best courses, they don't have Wi-Fi in that mountain, or there's not enough parking spaces. And so, I guess it's just trying to find these dream locations. Eventually we'll find them.
Eventually.
I mean, right now the worst course, here's the funny thing, and I'm not going to name names, but when I was in 2022, like, there was one general course that if you took a vote, people would say was the worst course on the tour. And, like, I might agree, but if I gave that course a rating, like, it's an A-. Like, it's still a masterpiece of a course.
It's just the other ones are so
It's better
awesome.
than anything we played in the 90s, or just about. And it was maybe the worst course on tour, and so it's kind of one of those things where they're all good, but hopefully they watch this video and
hire us,
or ignore us, because I don't think the course designers should listen to us. Here we go again. All right, let's turn the camera off and settle this. Again, I'm a huge fan of you, huge fan of your mom. Wrong hand. Wait, I don't know what that means. The upside down handshake. Is that like the Sicilian kiss of death?
That's what we do as kids now.
That's what the kids do these days?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I feel so cool. That's how the kids say
Yeah, cool, man.
All right. Hey, thank you, everybody. Again, thank you, Gannon. This has been an honor. Just watching your career has been a treat, and I can't wait to continue to watch it. Still trying to be your competitor for a little bit longer, but I'm a fan too. From Sunday to Thursday. That's my final lesson of the day. No, from Thursday till Sunday, I'm not your fan.
Not my fan.
No,
I'm not yours.
I'm not a fan of anybody. When I'm competing against, I don't compete against people I'm a fan of.
Hey, Monday to Wednesday.
Monday to Wednesday, and the off season I'm a fan, and now it's the off season. So, all right, thanks, man.